Good afternoon, everyone. So today you clicked on this video because you're interested in learning about the communication theory known as critical theory. So before we get started, I do need to put a disclaimer informing you that critical theory is a very complicated theory. Why? Because it's very abstract and very ambiguous. But it also spreads not only in the communication field, but it also comes about in the psychology field, the social science field, sociology, any other field you could pretty much think about. Critical theory is also a part of it. So, in order for you to understand that, there's going to be different examples, different scholars, different theories who have contributed to critical theory, and also some different examples of how it relates to communication studies. The first thing we need to learn about critical theory is where it originated from. It began in the Institute of Social Research at the University of Frankfurt in 1920. The idea of critical theory comes from the original ideology known as Marxism, which was originally formulated by Karl Marx. The reason why critical theory is so important is because it stresses the reflection of a society. Not only the people who are in power, but also the people who are a part of the society. The reason why this reflection is so important is because it causes for constant growth within the society, which relates to no oppression within the people. This holds a certain level of checks and balances between the people of the society and the people who are in charge of the government. So, now that we have a little history and background on critical theory, the big question is, what is critical theory? Like I mentioned at the beginning, critical theory is such an abstract concept, and the definition varies depending on what field you're looking at it. The way we're going to look at it in this presentation is the way that we see it in the communications field. Although we are going to touch on different realms and different fields, the main focus today is communication studies. So the definition that we're going to define critical theory in this presentation is a philosophical approach to culture, and especially to literature, that seeks to confront the social, historical, and ideological forces and structures that produce and constrain it. The term is applied particularly to the work of the Frankfurt School of Social Research. So the next question y'all are probably wondering is, what does all of this mean? Basically, critical theory stresses the need for constant questioning of ideas or ideologies in order to benefit not just the people who are proposing these ideas and or theories, but the people who are going to be a part of these ideas. So the perfect example can be government. If a government is implementing new laws, the people have the right to contribute their ideas and their opinions in order for these laws not to only benefit the lawmakers, but also the people who are a part of the society. Now that we have the brief understanding of what critical theory is, let's look at some of the theorists and scholars who help contribute to critical theory. The first theorist that we're going to look at today is Max Horkheimer. He was a leader at the University of Frankfurt, was a professor of philosophy and social sciences, and was considered the father of critical theory due to his writings in the 1930s. Horkheimer was really known for his ideas on capitalist society and his opinions on how capitalist societies usually contradict themselves, saying that they're there for the people but usually don't benefit only the people who are in power. Horkheimer actually set the basis for critical theory and the ability to ask questions to these societies in order for them to benefit the society and not just the people in power. The reason why this is so important is because it creates constant growth within the society and just doesn't hold it to a certain level. This also gives people more power and more say on what they actually need from people. This also spreads to different fields of research as well. With constant questions cause constant growth. Another theorist that was really important to critical theory was Theodor Adorno. He was also a professor at the school at the University of Frankfurt and focused more on the suffrage and oppression of people in society. His main contribution to the critical theory was identity thinking. These theories really set the foundation for critical theory and set the basis for what it became today. It also opened the door for other scholars to contribute their opinion on what critical theory is and how it really affects other fields of research, including communication, psychology, sociology, and other social sciences. So, let's take a look at some of the new theories that have really helped to contribute to critical theory. One of the new theorists who studied critical theory in the late 1980s was Jürgen Habermas. Habermas focused on how sexual, racial, religious, education, occupational, political, and economical feeds our needs to refine these powers. The reason he focused on these was because society needs to feel a part of something. which gravitates them to political parties, religious beliefs, and other forms of powers in our social society. These powers see that and create ideas and or notions to force people to gravitate to these ideas, holding them to a certain level of commitment. Habermas also realizes that these ideologies keep keep people and or reinforce people to become oppressed. Why? Because of the need to belong to something. Some other notable scholars who contribute to critical theories can be Herbert Moschus, Walter Benjamin, Frederick Pollock, Leo Lowenthal, Eric Form. So now that we covered some of the main theorists of critical theory, let's look at some of the core tenets of critical theory according to Max Horkheimer and Jürgen Habermas. So the first one is, all knowledge is founded in sensory experience. The second one would be, the meaning is grounded in observation. Number 3 would be, concepts and generalizations only represent the particulars from which they have been abstracted from. Conceptual entities don't exist in themselves, but they are mere names. And the fourth one is, science is unified according to the methodology and of the natural sciences. And the last one would be, values are not facts, and hence values cannot be given as such sense experience. Value judgment cannot be accorded to the status of knowledge that it's claiming as well. So, what do all of these things mean? What all of these core tenets mean of critical theory is that we as a society have the responsibility to question certain things that occur within the society or the suggested field. But we have to see it in a critical approach, which means that we have to, in a way, take out our opinion and see everyone as a whole. Rather, this can not only benefit me, but it could benefit everyone in society. In some cases, a law may benefit 75% of society, but maybe not 25. Does that make it right, or does that make that wrong? That's what critical theory does. It opens these questions up for discussion in order to find out a law or a rule or a practice to not just benefit one group of people or one person, but to benefit everyone as a whole. So now that we discussed some of the theorists and the core tenets of critical theory, let's talk about some of the subjects that critical theory can help and relate to. Some of these subjects can be literary criticism, linguistics, semiotics, psychology, philosophy, feminism, screen theory, and communications. Another thing that critical theory can really help and help support could be structuralism, post-structuralism, deconstruction, and postmodernism. So, now that we covered some of the subjects that critical theory can relate to, let's focus on one field specifically that critical theory has a large impact on, which is communications. The 3 types of critical theory that we're going to go over in communications are going to be critical media theory, critical communication, and critical organizational theory in communications as well. All right, so let's begin. So the first critical theory in communications we're going to look at is going to be the critical media theory. So this theory has multiple scholars who contribute on the idea of it, but it really just focuses on one, which is McCullen in 1964. Critical media theory is the process of breaking and dissecting media and understanding the root and the idea of these concepts. One of the most important ways to see critical media theory is, of course, from the McCullen 1964, where he mentioned that the medium is the message. So what does that mean? Critical media theory is being able to look at media and break it down and understand what they're trying to tell you. But a lot of things go into really understanding media. For example, what's the source? Who's saying what? And understanding what is exactly the message, right? So the next step is, how do we apply this? So, the application. The foundation that any form of critical theory is ask a question and never take anything at first glance. So like I mentioned previously, number 1 would be understand the source. Number 2 would be understand the message and where the source stands. And the third one would be always look for alternate news and verify ideas. For example, you hear something on Fox News, it's very important to go and check what CNN is saying about it, or Al Jazeera, or any other form of media or news culture is saying about it, right? In order to create your own critical idea of what the message actually is. So understanding that the source controls the idea and you have the power to critique and or question these ideas. So that's what mainly critical media theory is used for. understanding media, understanding the message of media, and understanding how to cultivate your own ideas based on what the media is saying. So, now that we covered critical media theory in a nutshell, the next theory that we're going to move on to is going to be critical communication theory. So, critical communication theory is the process that everything can be challenged. This theory is based mainly on the educational system. This theory is focused on creating an environment that benefits the people and or scholars and or institution. Some notable scholars on the critical communication theory can be Paulo Freire, Robert Craig, and Stanley Dietz. So, the overall idea of critical communication theory is that education is not one size fits all. This is remembering that all schools are not the same. Some styles can benefit a certain demographic of scholars, while the other cannot benefit them. So finding the correct way to approach these scholars and or educational institutions is a major key. With that said, I really appreciate the time y'all have dedicated to watching this video, and I hope it made critical theory a lot more clear to y'all, and I hope it helped your understanding of how to implement it and use it in your everyday life.